Oh, look. Welcome everybody for another episode of Omnistone. It's a reunion special in honor of the 2020 year of the Phoenix announcements. And the gang, the boys, are back in town, featuring a +1 this time. Kip, I thought we said we're all going stag this event. One you love.
Shiro just walked in and walked up to me, and I couldn't not pick him up and cuddle him because who could? Look at him.
Well, there's always room for one more in the tavern and room for one more in the show. We have so much to talk about, but first I want to check in also with 2014 World Champion James Firebat Kostic. How's it going, Firebat?
It's going pretty good, pretty weird, and pretty cool to be back doing the show again. It's been a really long time since I've talked about Hearthstone in this kind of capacity.
That's right. Well, I'm sure the two of you who have been streaming a lot, Kibler and Firebat, you guys have been killing it, thousands of viewers every day, and I'm sure they've been pegging you nonstop with Hearthstone questions, especially with the announcement. Great job, by the way, yesterday on the video, Kibler, on all of those announcement stuff with Chad and Dean. And we're going to break it all down. We only have 2 hours, so we're going to go ahead and jump in. But first, we want to say how much we missed you guys at home. Glad to be doing this show again. Also, shout out to Greg and Matt from Omnistone who are helping out with this episode in terms of graphics and production. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right in. First, you saw the intro video. We have a bunch of stuff and a new class to talk about, but there's also a new patch in Hearthstone for 16.6, and it introduces all of the new mechanics that we'll be talking about with Year of the Phoenix, because this is still part of the preface, the pre-rotation of the new year of the Hearthstone Zodiac. So with that, you have a new legendary. Kael'thas Sunstrider is a free legendary for everybody. New Tavern passes out, the pre-order bundle, as well as a giant Battlegrounds patch, which I believe, Firebat, you've been grinding a ton of Battlegrounds. How have you been liking 16.6 so far?
Well, it definitely has a lot of cool new features and interesting hero design and stuff like that. I'm not sure how the balance is yet. It does seem that it's more polarized than ever, with some of the newer heroes being way better and some of the older heroes kind of being mediocre. But we are moving up pretty soon to have 4 heroes available for your choice instead of 3, which I think will help with that problem a lot of feeling like at the beginning of the game, oh, I have 3 crappy heroes, there's nothing I can do. So with the 4th one being added into the mix, it's less likely to happen and will help alleviate some of those problems. But yeah, Battlegrounds, I think from a design standpoint and a fun standpoint, they're doing a lot of really great things. And a lot of the new cards and builds and archetypes are fun and interesting. And a lot of the new heroes make you think about the game in a different capacity, which I think should be the goal of a hero. It shouldn't be just you're doing the same thing, but it's a slightly different. I like thinking about the game differently. I like the, Deathwing making you think of reevaluate units, Tyrion, how it made you reevaluate units. Maybe not as strong as it was, but stuff that makes you reevaluate the game is what I want out of a different hero. And I think a lot of the newer heroes have been doing that. That's really cool. So yeah, balance I think is a little up in the air, but other than that, design I think is really good, and then monetization I think is the last issue with Battlegrounds, and that part is also a little potentially yikes. I mean, they had to do something, but what they did maybe is a little bit too far.
What do you mean? I know you've kind of threw a lot at us. What do you mean they went going to be too hard to get to that? You don't like that little paywall they set up for the 4th?
Well, the previous paywall, right, was you needed to get X amount of packs, and I think the number was 30, and then you'd have access to all of the content, right? If you just had 30 packs, and a lot of the packs you get for free and from quests and doing random stuff. People on Reddit did the math. It wasn't that expensive. It was pretty easy to get access to. Now you have to have the perk pass, which you can either get included in one of the mega bundle, comes with the perk pass, or you could pay $20 or 2,500 gold for the perk pass, which has some arena tickets, and you get to choose 4 heroes in Battlegrounds. And it's pretty necessary to have an enjoyable, you're going to have a better time in Battlegrounds if you get to choose 4 heroes, because it really sucks if you get to see the 2 heroes you don't get to choose pop up, and you have to pick from the 2 crummy ones. You're just going to get tilted right out of the gate. But and you have to pay this $20 at every expansion, so that's comes out to be like $80 a year to play Battlegrounds, which is pretty steep compared to the old one, which is a lot of the packs you kind of get for free and you get along the way and you work your way towards the 20 packs necessary to have the maximum hero choice.
I mean, it is like I didn't actually hear about the Tavern Pass until someone asked me about it on my stream today. So it's not something that I have like really thought about deeply. But I mean, 2,500 gold. If like you are going to be a Battlegrounds, if you want to be a Battlegrounds only player, you can easily earn 2,500 gold per expansion just playing games of Battlegrounds, right? Like, I don't see that as being something that is like challenging to allow you to actually just like play at the highest level if you're playing tons of Battlegrounds.
Is
That's
there
not, like,
quests for Battlegrounds
that
currently?
much gold. I mean, there are some quests for Battlegrounds, but you also just like earn gold per win, right?
Well, you get you need to get a win in Battlegrounds, and you need to get 3 of them. So a win in Battlegrounds is a top 4.
Sure.
So you need to get 3 top 4s to get 10 gold. So if you do the math of that, and then the average time per game of Battlegrounds is
that might be too difficult.
It's much longer than Constructed to get 2,500 gold.
I was thinking of that
in Constructed terms.
Yeah, the Constructed win rate.
It's a lot longer than Constructed because per game it's more time, and I would say it's more difficult per game. Yeah. So
it is. I mean, I remember when I was at Blizzard talking to them about Battlegrounds before they launched it, and we were like, "What's your plan to monetize this?" And they were like, "Well, they had like the pack thing." And it was like, there's a concern, obviously, that like, what if people are just focusing on playing this and that's it, right?
Which is kind of happening a little.
Money Hearthstone, right? And obviously, like some people are like, well, sure, people should be able to do that, and they can. But if they want to like maximize it, that's what they're looking to like have at least some element of monetization available for people. My thought, my suggestion, and a lot of people's suggestion there was like have stuff like alternate hero skins and emotes that are alternate emotes that aren't just like the ones that they have in the game right now that people can unlock if they want to like have like the cosmetic stuff and just have the core gameplay elements of it be free.
Right. I like cosmetics. I like the ideas like that. But to play devil's advocate a little bit here, you don't get to see your cosmetic every game because you don't get to choose which hero you play. Like you have some control over it, but you don't get to like hand pick your hero every game. You have to discover from the pool. So if you only get your hero 1 in 10 games, are you really feeling great about your purchase of a skin that you only get to use 1 in every 10 games?
Well, it also just sort of depends what it is, right? Like what you're getting, what they're having as being purchasable things. Is it like individual hero skins? Is it like gold skins for all the heroes? Is it alternate emotes you can use? Stuff like that. I don't know. But...
Yep. A proposed idea that I threw because they were like, "Do you have any ideas on how to monetize it?" And I said, modular game boards. Like you give people different things that they can plant on each corner of the board, and then they can kind of customize their own game board. Something like that, I think, would go a long way since it's about expression. But no, you're totally on the money. Like I think, on the money. The monetization scheme of Battlegrounds has actually been quite a painful thing. I've heard rumors that there's some heat towards Team 5 that Battlegrounds was too accessible and too free, right? Like in the sense that you have all these and you don't have an opportunity to convert them into customers, which is ultimately, as much as we love the idea of games being free as like entertainment source, they need to find a way to drive revenue.
I agree they need monetization. I agree that maybe the original monetization of the 20 packs to get your extra hero choice was too lenient considering the amount of packs that you just naturally get for free over the course of an expansion. But I also think 20 is too far. So I think they started too lenient and then went too far with the monetization because 20 per expansion, 4 expansions per year, $80 for Battlegrounds that's a lot of money, especially when you compare it to the cost of a lot of other games out there that exist. 80 is big.
3 expansions per year, 4 expansions.
Yeah, there's 3 expansions per year.
Do you know something that we don't, Firebat? That has
unless there's an extra expansion being added in there, you're adding, adding an extra expansion, and yeah.
All right, 3 expansions per year, $60. But $60 is less than 80, but it's still.
Who's playing Hearthstone regularly and you're just buying the pre-order bundle, you just get them.
Right.
So,
but
like it's not it's not something that you have to spend in addition to that. It's a bonus that it's rolled into that as well.
It hurts the people though that are Battlegrounds only players a lot because there are some of those players out there that mainly focus on Battlegrounds and only a little Constructed, and maybe they don't buy the big bundle. So then,
but that's sort of the point, right? That if you're going to be a Battlegrounds only player, that like you either have to accumulate a lot of gold through like being successful in battlegrounds at like a pretty
Special events.
pretty serious clip, or you have to spend some money every expansion. Like I don't think that that's crazy. If like because let's say you can't get 2,500 gold every single expansion, right? Let's say you can get it every like other expansion. So if you said to spend like $15 like every expansion, or $10 every expansion, like on average, right? Like over the course of the year, like how bad is that to be able to just play as much battlegrounds as you want, right? And get all the perks that are involved in it. Because the fact that there is a gold cost and not just a dollar cost, and you get gold through playing battlegrounds, if you're a battlegrounds only player, you can at least get part of this through your success in battlegrounds.
I mean, and if people like to play battlegrounds and some constructed, as it seems like a big portion of the audience does enjoy doing, get that gold pretty easily. Like we're talking about, they've been ramping up the events. They're doing like one major event where you can get a lot of gold every single expansion. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the roadmap. But for now, let's briefly cover for all those Battlegrounds fans out there, some of the new heroes or some of the balance changes that are coming through. We can just blow through them if none of them are particularly interesting to you. So we have a new Murloc hero. It's very small font here, and I don't know how. I think it's like Fungalmancer.
Fungalmancer Flurgle.
Flurgle is his name. Finley has a reworked hero power, which is essentially a reroll. And then you have Putricide getting a couple of tweaks. Any of these stand out to you, Kibler or Firebat?
Well, one thing that I think is a big deal, it's not just Putricide. Lich King is targeted too. Like both Putricide and Lich King now have targeted special abilities, which I think is a really interesting in that it gives you more flexibility in terms of how you build a comp, how you position your comp. It's not just like, I hope I get a cleave, I make it attack first, right? Which is basically what Putricide always was. And like I feel like by making Putricide more powerful, by making Lich King more powerful, they're doing more to sort of make the weaker heroes better and give you sort of more of like kind of build arounds like in different ways, rather than just we're just like trying to like power down all the ones that are too powerful. Because I think Firebat's right in what he was saying, and Firebat's actually on this side of the screen. I think Firebat's right in what he was saying, that it's more fun to have a hero that it feels like changes your decision making in the way that you actually build your army, right? Your warband, rather than like everything's just kind of like neutered and like it's like, oh, it doesn't matter that much what hero I am. I just do the same thing every game. And having more options, like, oh, I want to be looking for this sort of thing, I think is cool.
Yeah, let's pull up that second slide to show what.
Oh, there they are. Okay.
About. Lich King before only gave Reborn to the rightmost minion, and now you can target it, which is a really big thing. Ysera getting buffed to have dragons in the tavern. Dragons seem to be taking over a lot of games for me. Firebat, I was watching your stream yesterday right after the patch. You were talking about dragons. Is the dragon hype real now that we've had like a day with the patch here?
Dragons are a lot better than they were before. I mean, they're more of a Divine Shield comp, I would say, than pure dragons is my go-to anyway, that I lean to, where you use the Divine Shield dragon, and Cobalt Guardian is still kind of the star of the show. But just dragons in the mid-game got a lot more powerful, just to kind of flex for a little while. Sometimes they go all the way if you get an early enough Kaligos, but it's usually not a top 1 comp at higher MMRs. You're going to want to transition into like the Divine Shield with the Murloc guy, and mix in Menagerie a little bit. But yeah, dragons are pretty sweet. I think Ysera is much, much stronger than before. Previously, her hero power had to cost mana, which was, it was okay. It was pretty bad. Now it's free, and free is good. It doesn't matter if it's kind of crummy. Kind of crummy free things are pretty good.
I actually hadn't seen Ysera in this new version yet. That's actually, it seems pretty sweet. Like you just have more options in every single time you purchase, and them specifically being dragons obviously pushes you again sort of in a specific direction that I think is like good in that it makes your experience feel different when you're playing that hero.
Yeah, usually
Pyramid
when I was playing,
seems good now. +4.
I haven't gotten the chance to try him, but
remember Pyramid is plus. Now it's like, okay, +3. Oh, now +4.
Yeah, in the year 2030,
Like, brick is getting better. We can build him strong enough. You just need enough bricks.
I want to do the get a pyramid with I pack a big punch, the micro machine, The
Oh,
1/2
sure.
that scales attack. If you can like buy 2 of those or something really early and hero power the health on those, maybe that would be sweet.
I've seen people do that. And it is, yeah. I saw someone have like a micro machine that was like 10 health on like the fourth turn or something like that. And I was like,
Yeah, or
oh,
with the 1/2 Murloc, maybe it could make that unit relevant, the one that scales attack.
yep. That's another
So
one that I've gotten pyramided against me, and I was like, oh man, that's scary.
yeah.
A
So
couple of more changes to heroes. We'll just blow past them real quick. Millhouse, Rat King, and Maleficent Mana Storm getting buffs for all of those people who've been playing Battlegrounds since the beginning.
yeah,
Remember,
Millhouse is crazy.
Milos is
If you
really
get
good.
a-
At it, yeah.
So like if you get a token with Millhouse, then you just get to start the game with 2 units, which is pretty cool. You get the token, you sell the token, and buy another unit on turn 1, and then you get to level and then sell a token and buy 3 2-star units.
Yep.
You basically you have a full board by like turn 4 in the game, and you get a power level to like 5 or 6 before anyone else. I've been at 6 with Millhouse while everyone in the lobby was still at 3. It's
All right.
I don't know. Millhouse feels insane. I've never not gotten first place with Millhouse so far in this this patch.
It feels like such a small thing, but it's a huge thing
Oh,
for
yeah.
something like Millhouse, which completely changes the game. So definitely got to experiment. I haven't played against or with Millhouse patch. Then we have Deathwing, which a much deserved nerf, but maybe not even as impactful as it seems, because most Deathwings still top 3 in my lobbies all the time. And then Reno getting a buff from 4 to 3. Let's cover really quickly some of the card changes in Battlegrounds, and then we'll move on to all of the Year of the Phoenix stuff. So High Main has moved down to Tavern Tier 4, and then with a couple of stat buffs to Dragons, which has seemed to be pretty decent. And then Caligos got buffed to a 412, which was pretty interesting because I always felt like Caligos was a very good dragon already, but giving him a ton of stats, as well as buffing or changing some of the other dragons that we saw, like making this a 3 Tavern Tier 3 cost instead of 5, but only giving +2/+2. Any quick passing thoughts on those, Firebat?
Quick passing thoughts. I'm interested by the Netrium Overseer nerf because I didn't think demons were like a problem at all. So I wonder if this is foreshadowing for some better early game demon cards being released in the future, and they're just kind of nerfing this along with all that other stuff because of that. So I'm hoping for for some more early game demon cards.
I feel like
It was
Overseer was one of the best early demon things because it just represented so many stats, just naturally.
But it's still not very good compared to some of the other stuff you could be doing in the early game.
I mean, it's not necessarily
I don't
the
know.
best thing.
Yeah.
It didn't require much, right? Just like this plus a demon is just like effectively 4/6 worth of stats.
And then you're sad because you have committed into demons, though. And you're like, oh god, if I don't find a soul juggler, I gotta get out.
Demons have had their time in the sun for a long time in Battlegrounds. And also it makes sense because if you think about it, with Descent of Dragons, it was a Dragons Battlegrounds patch. Maybe we get like a big influx of demons from Ashes to Outland. Ashes of Outland, excuse me.
That's true. That is thematic, too.
Yeah, it's thematic too, exactly that.
That
Illidan, love him.
the 3/4 dragon too is absolutely nuts. He was on the first slide. It used to be a 2/4, and you never really bought him. Now he's a 3/4. I buy that guy almost every time I see him.
You're talking about the Herald of Flame?
No, the one to the right of that. The Herald of Flame's also pretty cool. I still don't usually buy that, but I see a lot of people try it. It does all right for like 2 rounds. The thing gets eclipsed so quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
I
feel like
think
it gets
with itself,
updated.
it's a lot better, and with the Twilight Emissary being able to buff it earlier, I think that matters a huge amount for how good Herald of Flame is. One of the big problems it had bad stats for its place in the Tavern tier. It didn't survive most attacks, and now it's like easier to buff and starts with better stats. It's obviously so good against any kind of token type strategy. I would love having this just in my comp. Just if there's a Deathwing in the lobby, it's just like, okay, I want this guy like down to the right to just kill those rats. Like, gotta get rid of him. He is the exterminator.
Yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
definitely interesting. There's so many like mid-game strategies that I kind of want to test now in the Battlegrounds patch, which is very exciting. Sorry to push the conversation along, boys. We got a lot to cover. There's also some unnerfs. We talk about balance changes, but buffing people back to some of their original costs or somewhere near them has happened for 10 cards, including Dr. Boom, Mad Genius, Giggling Inventor, Raiding Party, Reckless Experimenter, but also some of people's favorite cards like Yogg-Saron, Hope's End, Raza the Chained. These are the cards that are getting unnerfed even in Wild, which you love to see it, because part of the reason why we want to play Wild is to be able to access those old cards and those powerful synergies that we miss so much. So this was a fantastic move. This was actually kept secret from us. They were talking to us back at the summit that they were thinking about it, but they didn't tell us what list it was. So I was very excited when I just logged in. It just happened to appear on my.
Yeah. When I was actually at the studio doing recording the showcase thing, the stream, I logged in to test the game for Demon Hunter, and it showed me like Dr. Boom, Mad Genius, now 7 mana. I'm like, what? And I thought that like that meant these would go into effect prior to the upcoming Masters Tour this weekend. So I was like, oh my God, you're like unnerving Dr. Boom and like it's happening before this event. And they're like, no, that's happening afterwards. I'm like, thank God.
The Masters Tour I don't think even Kael'thas is eligible for the Masters Tour. They're just playing on.
Right. Yeah, that got banned.
Effective. So
yeah. Giggling Inventor not even unnerfed to its original cost though. It used to be 5 on release. That's why I think Giggling Inventor is maybe the most most broken card ever unreleased in Hearthstone history. That thing used to cost 5.
You won the world championship with Undertaker, and you're saying that like some other card.
You have to build around Undertaker. You got to put Death Rattles in your deck.
Oh wow, that's tough.
The Hall of Champions Tavern.
All you have to do for Giggling Inventor is draw Giggling Inventor when it costed 5. You didn't need any synergy.
5 anyways.
I
think Giggling Inventor was even more broken than Undertaker.
No.
I mean,
it was like a very powerful card, and it was miscosted, but like games did not just like get completely snowballed, immediately when someone played a Giggling Inventor if they didn't answer it immediately. It was just super good.
You just play Giggling Inventor and then go face, and they can't trade with your minions. Basically end the game.
Started a war in chat. People are talking now. No, it's Corridor Creeper and the Bone Mare. People are like the spreading.
The Bone Mare is definitely not even close to. No.
They're talking about their least.
Time out the guy that said Bone Mare. That guy has no idea what he's talking about.
The bat has spoken. We do want to talk very briefly about if you're a big fan of Battlegrounds, and 16.6 patch was massive for it. HS Replay released today a Battlegrounds section of their website, hsreplay.net/battlegrounds. So it has things like hero tier lists and positioning, tavern guides. I'm always on the fence of this stuff because it always feels like, are we taking away the edge from good players? But, maybe there's good opportunities to read the data and even fix your play if you're a high MMR player. Always good to use these data to find ways to improve your play, because interpreting data is, in my opinion, a very big skill set that's underappreciated.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of stuff with Battlegrounds. I was using a tool a guy made that calculates your odds of winning every single fight, which was like super interesting for trying to learn the game. Because sometimes when you're playing Battlegrounds, it's hard to realize, hey, I'm absolutely screwed this fight. Because you just look at it and you're like, maybe I win? I don't know. This seems really 50-50. And at the end of the day, sometimes the data will say, you had 0% chance to win that fight. And you're like, oh, I thought I was just getting unlucky. And it's like, no. You messed up somewhere earlier. You leveled too early, something. You were too weak. So this sort of information can really help learn Battlegrounds. Because it can be really frustrating to continually lose because you're doing things wrong and think that it's just because you're getting unlucky. It's kind of the double-edged sword with the variance-based games like this, is the variance keeps things fresh, but it also makes it, there's an extra layer that you have to see through to be able to actually learn and improve.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I play a lot of TFT. I'm actually going to be hosting a TFT show later today with Travis Gafford. And, one of the things is like, in those kinds of auto battlers, they obscure the RNG a little bit better. In Battlegrounds, you remember every single bad attack that happened. It's just one at a time. So hopefully this companion app will help you dissect that as opposed to just blaming RNG. Anyways, with that, we have finished just the first section of the show. We've got so much more, and we're not taking any breaks. Let's roll straight into the Year of the Phoenix, featuring Brian Kibler's announcement video along with Chad Nervig, aka Celestalon, and Dean Ixar Ayala. Year of the Phoenix, we've heard a little bit of Brian Kibler's reaction on stream. Firebat, what was your reaction to the Year of the Phoenix when we found out the summit?
I was actually at the summit. I couldn't attend. So I had like a Discord conference call with all the other people that couldn't make it to the summit. And then the PowerPoint presentation didn't work. And then we just kind of chatted about it. So I was like, yeah, this seems really cool.
Oh, I thought they showed it. They told me that they showed it to you guys. It's kind of like a community online. So it's okay.
Yeah, we had the online chat about it. It was sweet. No, I'm excited for all that news. I was blown away by how much there was.
Yeah.
My reaction leaving it was, typically when we have these things with Hearthstone, my reaction has always been, man, I wish they would do more. And my reaction this time was, are they doing too much? So it's a total, 180 of how it usually goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing that stood out to me, and I think we're leading off just with the roadmap, just to give you perspective of the things that they want to deliver in terms of the products. And, they're going to start off with a lot, right? You can look at phase 1 and look at the new class, Demon Hunter, look at, the priest we work. They're doing Hall of Fame and a bunch of other stuff. But even in phase 2, there's one thing that catches my eye, new game mode. And they said that they want to deliver around that same level of Arena, which is not just like a Tavern Brawl one-off thing that you play for a weekend at most, but they want to give something that's repeatable. And the thing that stood out to me, and partially why, I was driving so much hype along with everybody else, was because Ben Lee, in his message, his direct, was saying that they want Hearthstone to be the home where you can play all kinds of card games. It's not just a constructed vending machine that you visit every few months. They want you to be able to tackle all kinds of formats, which honestly is something that we've been begging for so long. And the fact that they're committing to it with a visible roadmap, because we know when to approximately expect it, I think that's massive, especially because for people who have been, and Kibler and Firebat understand this a lot, for people who have been like diehard Blizzard fans for like decades at this point, realize they never promise this stuff. They say when it's done, it's done. That's when we ship it. Good games take time, right? That was the old Blizzard that everyone originally fell in love with in terms of the quality and the polish. They never really promised. It was always soon TM. It was always, it's on our radar. Now they're actually giving out that timeline. So that's what gets me really, really excited. And I love this. I love this so much. Oh, also, shout out to the achievements and progression, which I think a lot of people can ask for in phase 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like Firebat said, a lot of times it's like, okay, and a lot of people's expectation coming into these Blizzard announcements, these Hearthstone announcements in particular, is like, okay, what's the next expansion? They're like, oh, they just released expansions, then that's it. And slowly they've been increasing the amount of stuff that they've been doing, but slowly, I think, is the operative word there. And now it seems like there's kind of like a deluge of stuff coming out this year. With first new class, we just released the new game mode with Battlegrounds at the end of last year, and now there's another one on the horizon, and all these other updates. To say nothing of like just the quality of life type stuff, like the duplicate protection, the free deck for returning players, all the Demon Hunter stuff that everyone's getting for free. Like, I think that they are tackling what are a lot of the criticisms that people have had about Hearthstone for a while, which is that it's repetitive and stale. There's not new stuff. It's just the same thing with card updates. And it's like, well, now there's Battlegrounds, now there's a new class, now there's this, and the cost. The returning free deck for returning players and new players, along with the duplicate protection, dramatically reduces like the barrier to entry for Hearthstone. You can just like come back from having not played Hearthstone for 2 years. You immediately have a deck and you open packs, and they're all going to be things that you don't have until you have the entire set. And both of those are just awesome for anyone who's looking to get back into the game.
Yeah, and I was told that those decks will be reasonably good too, right? Like one of the decks that I heard that they were going to give was like Highlander Mage, and that's like one of the most expensive decks in the game.
Yeah.
Like straight up, it requires so many legendaries because you're playing a lot of one-ofs. That's awesome. That's great. And I love that you mentioned the duplicate protection. I had an argument, or more like a debate, a light debate, with my girlfriend Taylor over the weekend when she was like, Hearthstone to me still feels pay to win. And even though, I eventually like won debate by like proving it, the sentiment was there, is that the idea is that the card game Hearthstone is just way too expensive. Even for people who do want to play, they just feel like the cost is too prohibitive. So that's like a huge thing. And duplicates was been asked for so long for epics, right? We got it for legendaries. But the fact that they give it across all rarities now is really big. So that way, things like the pre-order bundle, I think that's something that Ben Lee called out specifically to us. He said that pre-ordering never really felt that great because you get so many extras and you get like, the extra dust, but you only can craft like 1.5 decks. This protection against duplicates should help a lot, especially for people who are spending money. Because that was the thing, right? With Hearthstone, it's great to not spend money because you got a lot of value. It felt so bad to put money into this game for so many years, and I think that's like a really big step. I don't think they're done yet. I think that they have a lot more things they can do, but this is a great step in the right direction. With that, one of the biggest changes too, especially for the hyper engaged players, are the rank system overhaul. Let's go ahead and showcase a little bit of that. So, as many people have played a bunch of different games, bronze to diamond is not a foreign concept whatsoever. But Kibler, can you once again break down just again for people who probably don't know how this is?
Sure. So there's a few major things that this ranked revamp does. One is it provides like more clear progression to people as they're moving through the system. Going from like bronze to silver to gold, platinum, diamond is feels a lot different than like, oh, I'm rank 20, I'm going to rank like 15. It's like that doesn't feel as appreciably different as like, oh, I went from silver to platinum. It feels cooler to like, move up in leagues. There's more opportunities for people to feel like they're making advancement because there's more ranks. The ranks have like fewer stars, so it's faster to move up between them. They also are significantly improving the rewards that you get as you move through the ranks toward the end of the season. Like the old rewards were essentially dust and golden cards, which frankly, like unless you're like a player who like cares a lot about golden cards, is just a really inefficient way of giving you rewards. Even if you like, look at like the dust value that it would cost you to make them. Most people just want cards, not golden cards. So they're shifting that to being like packs. You can see the rewards listed there on the right side of the screen. Packs and rare or epic cards, even legendary. For the first time you hit legendary, you end up getting a free legendary card. So a lot more ways for people to like get stuff through the system, as well as actually feel good about moving through the ranks instead of like kind of feeling like, okay, I get to rank 10 each month, then maybe I like get reset down to 14, make it back to 10. That doesn't feel like you're making much progress. In this, you get reset back to bronze 10 every month, but you have like a multiplier for your stars that you get. So you move pretty quickly back up and feel like you're making a lot more progress throughout the season.
Yeah, I believe if you make legend every season, it's 5 packs and 7 cards that they give. I think it's epic cards.
Yeah, these are all cumulative.
It's not just like a pack for legend. You get everything below it as well.
Yeah.
That was something that wasn't exactly obvious to me when I first looked at it. And then when I saw them scrolling down like the rewards on their little GIF video, I was like, oh, wow, that's actually like great incentive for people who want to play free to play and maybe can barely squeeze it to legend on like a budget deck or something. That's going to be a huge boon every single month, getting all those rewards. And that's what we want to see. That's what we want to see, the better rewards.
Yeah, it's really cool that they're finally doing this. I think we've been asking for something like this since 2013, 2014.
Before the release, we've been asking for it, yeah.
It's awesome that they finally got around to it.
Okay, yes. Clarification by Steve Chat. It is rares, not epic. Thank you for that. But still, the idea is that a pretty good amount of cards.
You do get epic cards from the first time rewards for some of them, though.
Good point. That's why we keep you around, Kibler. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and continue the discussion. Those are some of the systemic changes. There's been a lot of card and clash changes. Let's move on to the Hall of Fame section. First, we can talk about Priest and how they've ascended. Oh, actually, look, we have the Hall of Fame directly on our screen. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Here is your class of 2020. We have Acolyte of Pain, Leroy Jenkins, Spellbreaker, Mind Control Tech, and Mountain Giant. All neutral cards because of their relative high power level. A couple of these have been asked for a long time. A couple of them may be surprising. I'm going to hand over to Firebat here. What do you think of this class?
I think these are good selections to remove. Mountain Giant has been a big problem for a long time. Not always, but it pops up here and there as a problem card, whenever more card draw is introduced or mana cheating effects and things of that nature. Mind Control Tech is probably one of the most feels bad cards in all of Hearthstone, so it's pretty cool to see that one go. I don't think anyone's complaining about that. Leroy's been the finisher since forever, so I think people are ready to see him go. He's served his time. People are done getting 6-2'd in the face for lethal. The weird ones that people might have questions about, Acolyte of Pain and Spellbreaker. Spellbreaker and Acolyte of Pain, I think, are both to deal with class identity. So there's like certain classes that they want to be card draw classes and certain classes that they want to be removal, control-y / silencing classes. And having a powerful neutral silence kind of gray areas the class identity thing a little bit, I'd say. And I think they want to make silence effects be class cards so you can have classes that are good at that rather than just everyone having that option. And Acolyte of Pain is an insane card draw card and can be an engine for a deck with very little investment. So you don't want every class to be able to be a card draw combo class. So you want to take that away from being neutral and maybe reprint something similar as a class card so that you can further strengthen this is a combo draw class over the heads of other ones. But I don't know that for sure. That's just my thought on Spellbreaker and Acolyte personally.
Cool. It is a little bit surprising to hear that an aggro player is like happy to see Leroy Jenkins go out. I agree. I think it's been many times Leroy to the face or top deck for lethal with Leroy. Gilbert, let's hand it off to you. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to have picked the cards from the classic set, like the neutral cards from the classic set to go to the Hall of Fame, like these would be pretty much all of them. I've been advocating for Leroy and Mountain Giant to be Hall of Fame for a while for very much the reasons that Dean said during the presentation the other day. And I do think that Acolyte and Spellbreaker are partly about class identity and partly about just opening up additional design space for creating more different versions of this type of thing. Even if it's not necessarily class versions, even if it's just like, the example they use was like Gluttonous Ooze, right? Gluttonous Ooze is an expansion weapon removal card that can be interesting because there's space for something like that in the sort of design space that exists, right? Whereas if you have like Spellbreaker, it's like how many more like things can you make that are better than Spellbreaker or like more interesting than Spellbreaker when Spellbreaker just does the job so efficiently? And similar with Acolyte of Pain, there's just this like critical mass of neutral card draw that exists in the classic and basic sets between Acolyte and Loot Hoarder and Novice Engineer that are just like any deck can just play all these and just have so much card draw they can tear through their deck pretty much all the time. And that critical mass, even if an individual card isn't necessarily like too good, the fact that all of that exists always, I think, is too good and makes it so that too many classes can just do that all the time. And I think that getting rid of Acolyte of Pain as the most powerful of those and most complicated of those makes a lot of sense for your classic set.
Yeah, I think there's people in chat already talking about some of the other candidates that they would love to see. People have been talking about Malagos for a long time, Gadget Auctioneer, which is something that's been proposed by Kibler for also a very long time. I think specifically, and also Edwin Van Cleef, specifically, some of the designers even came out and talked about some of these cards, saying that they like the archetypes that get enabled from it. They think that cards like Gadget and Malagos are very skill testing. And I mean, when you look at some of these elaborate combo decks with Malagos and Gadsden Auctioneer, I tend to agree. Even though they do lead to some degenerate things, and when they become top tier, they are like overly oppressive. I do feel like they are really cool additions to Hearthstone, which I would miss. So for now, I mean, maybe you can remove it in the future year, but this is still, I think, a pretty good selection.
Yeah, they said also that they were heavily considering Sea Giant, and at the last minute decided not to send Sea Giant to the Shadow Realm, but he was up there. He was on the list for a little while.
Every giant.
Yeah, they don't like giants. They think giants maybe shouldn't be in the classic set because they like to print more giants, right? And when it's hard to print more giants when you have giants already taking up that space.
They take up a lot of space. They're giant.
They're huge.
Playing an 8/8 on turn 3 or 4 would be kind of oppressive, right? But thankfully, Rogue still can do it with Edwin Van Cleef really quickly. But I mean, you can, if you want to hear about their justification for it, as much as we're kind of joking and memeing around. Chad, aka Celestion, who did that announcement video with Gilbert, actually did a thread talking about the pros and cons of doing it. And some pro players, some grandmasters chimed in. It was very interesting discussion back and forth. In the meantime, though, let's talk about one of our favorite classes here on the show. And by one of ours, I mean the man in the middle here, Mr. Brian Kibler. Priest has gotten a rework entirely. 6 cards from the classic and basic set are now gone, and 6 new cards replacing them. And I'm just going to let Kibler lead this segment since I know Priest is a class near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, I've played, more Priest than anything else. I have like over 4,000 wins on Priest, and almost all of those are like slow controlling Priest decks, so they take a lot longer than the other wins. And I think there's 2 different types of cards here that are being Hall of Famed. One are the sort of omnipresent cards that kind of have defined powerful Priest decks through all of Hearthstone history, which is Cleric and Divine Spirit. Cleric, I think, is just too efficient a card draw effect and too oppressive an early minion in a lot of matchups. Games which involve Cleric and games that don't involve Cleric are like totally different because of just the sheer card draw power that it has. And Priest isn't supposed to be a class that draws a ton of cards. As Firebat was talking about, they're trying to consolidate class identity, and Priest having one of the best card draw cards in the entire game as a 1-cost minion, as a class that isn't supposed to be a good card draw class, makes very little sense. And Divine Spirit, I think, is just, this is a strategy like Divine Spirit Interfire has been a strategy for Priest that just blows people up in a single turn, again, since kind of the dawn of Hearthstone history. It's been various degrees of good and bad, depending on the supporting cast. But pretty much every deck that you try and build that's like kind of a mid-range board-based Priest deck, eventually you're like, you know what, this would be better if it was a Divine Spirit Interfire deck. And that kind of sucks. Not only like is it frustrating to lose to, it's frustrating as someone who wants to play a different variety of Priest deck to feel like I'm making a mistake anytime my deck isn't this. So I really liked removing that as well. The others are just cards that don't do what they want Priest to do anymore. Or rather do things they don't want Priest to do anymore, which is just blow your opponent up. I feel like other than like, Mind Blast, combo decks with Prophet Velen, you never see Prophet Velen played. I think it's actually a kind of a trap card for new players because they're like, oh, I have this legendary, it's awesome. And then the only thing you ever want to do with it is explode your opponent in one turn or like whittle them down with Anduin or whatever. And the others kind of similarly fall into that category. Soul Priest is kind of a sad card to lose with the circle combo because that's been pretty iconic for Priest. And Shadow Form is like one of my favorite cards, but it's always been terrible. And again, sort of does something that they don't really want Priest to do anymore. So I think it makes a lot of sense to get rid of that as well, as much as I will miss that one for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, they're like concentrating Priest on the Healy kind of Priest rather than the Shadow Priest archetype, which kind of makes sense. Every class should really probably only have one base core direction, and then the expansion can define side objective or side direction of their class.
Yeah, I'm looking on our outline to see if we have the 6 cards replacing these 6 classic and basic cards, and I think we might be missing.
I can tell you exactly what they are.
Go ahead and write it down for us.
If we don't have the graphic for them, I was just talking about them earlier today when I was recording a video. Do we not have the graphic? I don't actually have the outline in front of me, but
Because the next slide.
The new Priest cards. Are they there? Illidan.
Yeah.
There they are. All right.
Thank you.
So yeah, these new replacement priest cards, which are not intended to purely like replace those cards in terms of like archetype support and power level, they're intended to replace those slots because they're being removed, and shore up some of those themes that Priest is supposed to have. Now they've kind of redefined the identity. One of the really important cards here, I think, is actually Shadowward Ruin, because that actually gives Priest a good board clear in the classic and basic set, which they haven't had previously. Like their only like board clear, as I mentioned before, was like Akanai Circle, which is this unreliable combo for a class that's supposed to be control based, and they had to keep putting stuff like Psychic Scream and Plague of Death and Mass Hysteria and all this stuff into every expansion. So you just had this space taken up in every expansion for Priest in that had to be basically this in order for them to actually have any decent removal. So now they can have more of that space in expansions taken up by things that give Priest new and interesting ways to actually win the game, rather than just having to give them removal after removal after removal because it keeps rotating out every year. I think one of the other big cards here is, of course, the legendary Natalie Celine is actually just like a universally applicable good card in most decks. It's like a removal effect that's also a big minion that synergizes with healing and buff stuff. Because crucially, like you still have Inner Fire too, right? Like that's another reason that Power Infusion I think is interesting. You couldn't make Power Infusion while Divine Spirit was around because every health you give something is going to be double that half the time. But that's with only inner fire around. That's still an interesting card. You can like use it to buff your guy to win fights, and then potentially have it be burst with inner fire later on.
All good points. Firebat, anything to add here?
No, I think it covered it all. I think Priest is still on the weaker side compared to some of the other classes, though. Core set wise, like Natalie's cool. Shadow, Natalie's good. We'll go with good, not just cool. Shadow of Ruin's cool, which is a little bit less than good, and the rest of these are very shady. Most of these you probably wouldn't want to put in your deck on purpose. I'd say when you compare it to the actual strong class cards, but
Well,
it's a step in the right direction towards fixing Priest, and we'll just have to see how it actually pans out.
what about the balance changes for the rest of them?
Yeah. We've changed a bunch of cards in Priest and made them a lot better. So this is where this is more exciting to me. A lot of those cards I don't think were that exciting. Powered Shield being 0 is very exciting.
Is it? It doesn't draw a card anymore.
Oh shoot! I didn't see
Did you?
Now I'm not excited at all.
You thought they buffed the best?
I did. Well, they've done it before. Christology, other instances.
Fair enough.
If this drew a card, this would be sweet. This would be very exciting. Now I'm much less excited. Now it's a tempo thing.
That's the nerf here, right? Like Powered Shield went from being a card you put into every single Priest deck into like,
it's
you want to play.
Now.
I think that card is not very good now.
It's okay. Like it's like a Gadgets and Pyro thing, but Cleric's gone, so it's like, oh god.
That's really funny that you're just like, oh, they made Powered Shield 0. It's like
I was excited. I was like, 0 man Powered Shield.
But they did something else too. Like,
it would be, and then they can't put other cards like that. But that's not the only change / buff. We have Shadow Word Death going from 3 mana to 2 mana, and that's just pure mana upside. Then Holy Smite got changed to deal 3 damage, but
only 2
minion. So
there were a few other cards that got changed too. Do we have that? Yeah, there's Psychic Scream, Shadow Madness, Holy Nova both got reduced by 1 mana. Thought still got reduced by 1 mana. Holy Nova also doesn't damage players, but like a lot of these are cards that like got put into decks, right? They might not necessarily have seen like tons of play recently, but like Shadow Madness saw a lot of play during like Death Rattle Hunter type days, even at 4 mana. Holy Nova people played because it was the only thing you had. Now it's like, okay, well, it's actually like a consecration that doesn't kill your opponent and heals your guys. Death is a card that we see in Priest decks like all the time, which is just getting straight buffed. And I think Temple Enforcer is like legitimately a card I can imagine putting in a deck now as a 5 mana 5/6 that buffs something for +3. There's a lot of ways that you can actually like play to the board with Priest now that are kind of like mid-range Priest tools, like I think it was Cultier and Chaplain, the 2/3 that gives a minion was it +2 or +3 health. So just a lot of ways that you can like actually build out guys that you can fight for the board with, heal them, and now that you can't just like draw cards every time you heal something or blow your opponent up in a single turn with Divine Spear Inner Fire, you can give them more tools to allow them to do that.
Yeah, not to mention that there might be just like added benefits. Hearthstone, for most people who have played over the years, have now understood that it's also you have a very easy time generating resources off of stuff. So when you're playing things like Lyre the Sun Shard or whatever modern form of it, or even the Priest Galakron card, you will be able to generate these cards, and they're just more playable. So hopefully, it just gives a small collateral bump for Priest's ability to hang in the mid to late game if they're generating those resources as well.
Yeah. Way I see it, I still predict Priest to be one of the weaker core classes and going to need the most help during expansions to be competitively viable. But it is awesome and exciting to see them make these changes. And, we really don't know what's going to happen exactly. Some of these could end up being really, really good. It's hard to evaluate cards, especially things like AoEs, like I consider Shadow Madness an AoE, but Shadow Madness and Holy Nova and stuff like that, 1 mana can be a huge deal from being not very playable to being absolutely insane. So, but I predict, the bold prediction is Priest is still going to need some of the better expansion cards to be a very viable class.
Okay, that's totally fair. I think that with these changes, the rationale, at least the messaging behind what Blizzard was saying, was that they were at least like narrowing down and, as Kibler was mentioning, redefining after having years of experience, what priest's identity should be closer toward, instead of like kind of putting a few different,
Right.
you know.
What did they say? Like, what is the thing that they're narrowing down to? Did they give it a title?
Yeah,
They,
it's like
they want to
buffing
see more of a healing and control class rather than a
Okay.
burst damage class.
So they're like very big on duplication, and rogue is more on stealing, so to speak.
Okay.
Even though there's a couple of like combat tricks you can use, like Shadow Madness, it's a little bit less on that. It's more like, you know, make a copy of this minion or put copy of your opponent's cards into your hand and stuff like that. So that's kind of more for what they do compared to rogue. 'Cause I think there's a little bit of that, like, what does priest do that rogue doesn't do, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so with that, let's go ahead and talk about Ashes of Outland, since we're just kind of at that doorstep. So Ashes of Outland, the new expansion, themed after one of the most iconic heroes in Warcraft lore, Illidan Stormrage. Really, really excited to see Demon Hunter, the new class, come in. We could talk about so many different things, the Demon Hunter class. What does the 10th class mean for Hearthstone? How does this fit the identity with it? Even just some of the new cards. So let's hand it off to Mr. Brian Kibler here. What do you want to talk about here?
Well, first of all, I think that obviously the fact that Hearthstone is adding a new class for the first time in its 6-year history is a really big deal. I've been someone who has been very skeptical about the idea of Hearthstone adding a new class, period, in the past, just because I feel like there is a limited amount of design space that exists in the game, and it was already stretched. I felt fairly thin between the classes that already existed, and I felt like it was very important that the classes that did exist felt like they had a good sort of bedrock, a good identity to them, rather than just going and, oh, let's just add Death Knight because we want to add Death Knight or Monk or Demon Hunter or whatever. And I think that the work that was done over the past year or so to sort of make sure that each of the classes had a better defined class identity was a really important thing to do in the lead up to creating Demon Hunter. And having had a chance to play with Demon Hunter, it really does feel different than the other classes. Like the combination of different abilities it has, and the fact that it just has a 1-cost hero power. All these really make it play out differently, despite having kind of elements from other classes. It feels different than any individual one of them, and even different than like just having to play with Rogue and Hunter and Warlock cards combined. It kind of has its own thing going on. And I think that's really important for any class to have.
Yeah, when I first saw Demon Hunter class, I was like, I actually pogged in real life. I was like, oh,
you did. True. I was sitting next to him.
What? And then, the first thing they show on the next slide was, this is the hero power, and it was like hero power +1 attack this turn. And I was like, what?
I retract my pog.
Yeah, that was like inflating my hype a little bit during the summit, and everyone was kind of like laughing at me because I was kind of going through a roller coaster of emotions. But in practice, exactly what Kibler was saying, it does feel very different. It's one of those things that the moment you start playing, you're going to start to understand how we've been accustomed to 2-mana hero powers. And it actually just feels good to like, squeeze in that extra hero power, push that damage. And over time, you just recognize that you're able to be aggressive, which is really good. And of course, some of the details that we mentioned on the screen here, everybody gets the 30 Demon Hunter cards that are part of the release for Ashes of Outland for free. That's amazing, right? The idea is that they want everyone to be able to play Demon Hunters. So have fun, everybody out there who are going to be playing Demon Hunter Mirrors the first day of the expansion, or the Demon Hunter versus the mid-range Hunter, which seems to prey on every single day one deck. But Demon Hunter as a class looks so fun, and I love the mechanic of having the left and the rightmost card Outcast be a big part of the class identity, because it makes it feel really sweet, and the animations for it really do it justice, in my opinion. I'm kind of taking up a lot of space, Fire, but I want to hand it over to you for reactions or first impressions of this class.
Yeah, my first impression was, I can't believe they did this. At one point, we weren't adding more deck slots because that would be too confusing, and now we've come so far that we've actually added another hero, which kind of blew me away. And the mechanic behind the hero, the Outcast mechanic, you briefly touched on it there. That's when you have to play the card on the outside of your hand, and then you get the Outcast effect. Right. So the far left or the far right card. So you kind of have to, and the effects of these are huge. So you kind of have to, while you're playing the game, instead of just playing for tempo every turn, instead of just playing your best card, you have to think, how can I try and move this card to the outside of my hand? Maybe I can find a way where I can try and make this play good, or I could do that to do that. Because the effects of these outcast things are nuts. So I think it's a really cool mechanic that actually makes you think about the game differently and play the game differently. I much prefer it to the mechanic of a lot of the mechanics we've had in the past have just been like, your deck's a singleton deck, play this and win. Whee! So that's kind of sucked for me. And this effect I think is really cool because it'll actually make you think about how you play the cards in your hand. Which as a guy that plays card games, I like looking at my hand and thinking, how should I play these cards? And feeling like when I do, I can impact the game.
I think one of the most interesting things about Outcast is it makes you think about your non-Outcast cards all differently, right? Like, and not only when you're actually playing the game, but when you're building a deck too. Like if you're building a deck and you're like, you want to put in a bunch of Outcast things, you probably don't want to be playing a bunch of expensive stuff, because if you're playing a bunch of expensive stuff, it's harder to manipulate the position of things in your hand. As much as I want to build every deck with a bunch of expensive stuff because it's all sweet, probably not the best choice if you're trying to like I-beam and Skull of Gul'dan all the time.
Yep, it was the number one mistake I was making when we were just giving a little bit of brief time to play test it. I was stuck with 5-6 cost cards in my hand, and I just needed to get that free Outcast card. So it requires you to plan out your deck building. It requires you to plan out your turns way in advance if you're trying to get these big tempo swings. And yes, there is top deck element of it, which I think is really fun. But it even captures like the strength of, Hearthstone as a digital card game. And like Magic, for example, you can constantly like shuffle cards. And so hand tracking is going to be more important than ever. For a lot of these top players. So for the experienced players and for the players who are just kind of getting into it, I think it's very simple, but yet has a lot of surprising complexity to it the more you dive into Outcast. So we'll see. I think obviously in our limited play testing, we didn't really get to see too much of the Demon Hunter at its full power, but I'm really excited to see what some of these players who are really good, some of the grandmasters, to play some Demon Hunter, and also the player trying to get into. With that, they revealed some of the Demon Hunter basic set. And I know, Kibler, you've already talked about it a lot, but we're going to ask you again to review some cards with us, just for old time's sake, where you do like 3 reviews in the course of. So, we're going to start things off. And I guess we can keep it kind of broad because we have a ton of cards to go through, including Ashes of Outland. So just go ahead, talk about any card that stands out to you, Kibler.
So, well, a couple here. Chaos Nova is super powerful, right? Like it's a 5-cost, 4 damage AoE. Compare that to like Hellfire, which is still sees play in Warlock decks from time to time, or like Flame Strike. Obviously, Flame Strike hits only your opponent's stuff, but if you're looking to clear the board, this is like the most efficient like core set AOE that we have. Mm-hmm. Glaive-Bound Adept, the 5-cost 7/4 that if your hero attacks deal 4 damage. That's a ton of damage and a ton of stats, right? Like Nightblade, apparently became a Demon Hunter and is now much more powerful. And then I think that one of the really interesting things, the Warblades, Eldrazi Warblades with Lifesteal. One of the big differences, I think, in the play pattern of like Rogue versus Demon Hunter, both sort of in theory and kind of in the way that it's played out in my very limited experience, is that Demon Hunter actually likes attacking minions a lot, right? You attack minions all the time, whereas Rogue kind of wants to stab minions now and then, but eventually is just like, I'm going to just die if I keep attacking minions, because you don't have really much in the way of ways to gain life. The fact that there are lifesteal cards like Warblades in Demon Hunter's basic set, and they synergize with the hero power, right? Because the hero power is +1 attack, not like equip a dagger like it is for Rogue. So you can actually just like buff your lifesteal weapons and actually gain more life off of that weapon, which can be a really big deal in like any kind of race situation.
Yeah,
yep.
this core set of cards is a bit more impressive than Priests, I'd like to say. So,
well, I think it's
even after the Priest cards got buffed, they got nothing on this, not even close.
I do think that it's very important to keep in mind that Demon Hunter has just fewer cards than any other class, right? And some of the cards in Demon Hunter, I think the average power level cards in Demon Hunter is higher than the average power of the cards in any other class, right? Like if you look at what they have, and that's not to say that their cards are better. It's just to say that they have fewer weak cards. You don't have things like Mind Vision in here, right? You don't have things like the new like 1/1 get a guy from your opponent's deck. You don't have like kidnappers, right? Like the garbage stuff that kind of fills the like identity role in the classes. but doesn't really ever see play outside of like basic decks.
Right.
And Demon Hunter doesn't have room for that because they just don't get enough cards. So all their cards they get right now have to be good.
Well, as someone that likes to win, I would take quality over quantity any day.
Well, even if you could still have like the power level of the cards that actually see play be higher in another class because there's just more of them, right? Like if you have 50 cards to choose from and they're all like average of 5 and these are, average of 6, but you only get to put, a limited number in your deck, that you can still get a higher average of power level of cards in another class, even though the average is higher here.
Well, also keep in mind that there's more than just even standard in Hearthstone as well. Like they're like making things like
there's battlegrounds.
Yeah, there's battlegrounds in only true Hearthstone format. Arena, even Wild Demon Hunter might struggle for a long time given how much power level relative to every other class that's out there. So I believe, I'm not even sure if they've talked about it, but they will be releasing slightly more Demon Hunter cards than they will be for other classes throughout this year to help them catch up in standard.
It's 15 per expansion versus 10.
Yeah, so they're getting 50% more cards per expansion for demon cards, which is a little scary. I hope that it just doesn't lead to like incredibly skewed ladder popularity where everyone's just kind of jamming Demon Hunter. But it's the new exciting thing, and I think people really want to play the class because it'll be really fun for sure to see how Demon Hunter falls in the meta for the release of it on rotation. Let's go ahead and show some of the next few cards here, whatever we got next on deck. So we got some basic stuff like a 2/2 demon and just demons all around. Demons are a core part of the Demon Hunter, shocking, identity. But there's a couple of really useful things. You mentioned lifesteal being a really important mechanic given how much they're attacking. But they also seem to have a lot of token synergy. You saw the ones where they summoned the 1/1 rushers. This Satyr Overseer also was kind of annoying to deal with when people were getting it on the board pretty early. So having like a swarm, does that fit the Demon Hunter lore, Kibler? From your
their sort of theme is that they have that kind of armies, whether like the demons that they've sort of conscripted to aid them, or like the other Illidari, who are like the Demon Hunter legions of Illidan. That they like send them into battle and they like use their souls if they die, right? Because there's like soul magic is a thing. You see Soul Cleave there, which doesn't really interact with soul magic because it doesn't actually use the souls of dead things. But there's a lot of cards that like take advantage of your minions dying in a lot of ways to like rush a bunch of small minions in to end up getting triggers from that.
Okay. Firebat, what do you think of these cards? Anything stands out to you about them, or do they just look pretty straightforward?
They look pretty straightforward, pretty good. I mean, that 1-drop looks pretty sweet for, winning some aggro mirrors, killing their 1-drop while you play your 1-drop is a good way to start the game. And lifesteal is always really important in aggressive mirrors. Ziliax has been a main staple to help win aggressive mirrors. It's pretty cool to have a rogue class where you're not going to die instantly. A roguish-like class. But yeah, all of the cards so far for Demon Hunter, pretty much, except for that 2/2. That 2/2, you got the short end of the stick, unfortunately, there. But all the other cards are nuts. So it's pretty crazy.
All right, let's look at some of the next cards then. Pull up the slide. So there's a couple of other different weight directions that they've gone in, but they have some like normal stuff like silence, and they have hero immunity for it. Has any of these cards stood out to you, Kibler, when we were playtesting this?
The Battle Fiend, just a 1-cost 2/2 that keeps growing, is very powerful. Blade Dance, deal damage to your hero's attack to 3 random enemy minions, is very similar to like a Blade Flurry that doesn't kill your weapon in a lot of situations. And there's obviously like lots of ways to like just your hero power to buff your attack. So that's quite strong. I think Shiro has an opinion on this, so I'm gonna go let him outside and see if he can find some answers.
Yeah, there's a lot of cheap cards, and one of the things that I was thinking originally was like, can we make some kind of like fast combo deck that when you have a bunch of cheap cards, the first thing I think about is like Gadsden Auctioneer, and like thinking about ways to draw out my deck and start hitting things like Chef Nomi and hitting things like Zephyrs and whatnot. Exactly worked the way I thought it did, but there's a lot of cheap combat tricks that you have access to in this class that makes a lot of the board clears or like how to push damage. Some of those mini puzzles that you have turn to turn, they felt very rewarding when I figured it out and picked the right line.
Cheap cards are very important, right, to work with the outcast mechanic, because you
Yep.
need cheap cards to be able to manage your hand in a way that you can actually proc the mechanic.
Yeah. And the summon 6/1/1 Illidari with Rush, we've seen it be pretty effective in Hunter, right? When we saw the Swarm of Locusts, it'll have its use. There's actually specifically a card that we'll probably talk about when they reveal it, but it's like a juggler type card that works off of that really well. So we'll move on because the next slide, it seems like a lot of these slides, they kind of weave into each other so we can keep referencing them as time goes on. This is where you start hitting some of the more expensive cards. What I looked at cards like Hulking Overfiend, and it basically is like Batterhead, but put into a card. Bigger Batterhead. That's demon themed or demon tribe, so you have some demon synergy there. But the card that stood out to me the most when I was doing some of the playtest stuff was actually there's two of them. It's funny that they're also on the left and the right here. Is I-Beam and Illidari Fellblade. Those cards are bonkers. They're so good, especially if you get the primarily if you get the outcast effect, but sometimes even just having them as an option for the class being really good as well.
Lifesteal deal 3 is pretty solid.
Yeah.
Deal 3, heal 3. That's not a terrible card. That is Bash from Warrior, which was a 2/of for its entire existence.
Yeah, and I-Beam, being able to be 0 cost is so powerful in any kind of like tempo type matchup, and gives you like this burst of sustain like against like a hunter deck or whatever. It's like exactly what you want against any kind of aggressive deck if you can actually outcast it. One of the interesting cards here, I think, Feast of Souls, one of the things we're talking about that helps you utilize all those rushing Illidari things. Like a lot of decks that are like token type decks have looked to use stuff like Cult Master to take advantage of having a bunch of small bodies. And this is effectively Cult Master for 2, because you usually don't care about the Cult Master itself living, right? You mostly just want like a bunch of extra cards. And that's really strong.
Yeah, so that's a really good point.
I don't know. The downside between it in Cult Master or Starving Buzzard in this, though, is you don't get to keep seeing the cards as it happens to then chain, right? You play Feast of Souls at the end. But yeah, it's obviously way better than Cult Master because it costs half as much. But it won't be causing as much just like continuous things where you keep drawing things which then cycle. But it seems good.
Yep. So definitely these cards are on the above average for a class core set for sure. Let's move on to the next slide. See what we got. So Mana Burn is one of the more interesting ones. We actually haven't seen too many mechanics like this in Hearthstone in general. And it makes sense given that Mana Burn is definitely a concept that's core to a lot of these mana-based battles or card games in general. Keeper, how do you feel like that works in Hearthstone, given that your extensive experience in particularly Magic the Gathering?
I think Mana Burn's really interesting. I heard someone at the door, and I thought she was going to bark right into the mic, so that's not a good place for that. I really like Mana Burn. I think that Hearthstone has generally shown an unwillingness, or at least a reticence to do much in the way of disruption for your opponent that is lasts beyond like a single turn. There's stuff like Boom Pistol Bully, right, or Lotheb, which are pretty extreme versions that end up disrupting a very specific type of strategy. Whereas Mana Burn is just like, hey, whatever your opponent's trying to do, they're going to be worse at doing it next turn. And I think that this is the sort of thing that can be very powerful in the hands of an astute player who's like, okay, well, my opponent needs to Flame Strike me or Blizzard me next turn, and I can use my Mana Burn to keep them off of the ability to actually get that effect off. Disrupting your opponent's combo turn or reactive turn. But it is something which costs you a card. There is obviously ways to get that card draw, like Feast of Souls in Demon Hunter. But this is a fairly low cost to it, right? Of just a single mana, so you can use it relatively effectively, I think. So I think this is a card that has like a lot of potential, especially in the hands of like very strong players. I think it's a card that like a lot of weaker players are gonna like have in their deck and be like, this is terrible because they never use it right. So it's gonna have something that has like a really big delta in terms of the effectiveness, depending on who's playing it.
Mm-hmm. There's been cards kind of like this in the past. There's Rebuke, which was only spells, have to cost 5 more, and that ended up flopping and not really seeing any play. I think that could happen with Mana Burn, just because per card it's pretty expensive for this effect. But the thing that kind of gives me some hope that Mana Burn might be a card that actually becomes something we see all the time is, again, that the Outland mechanic, where you want to play cheap cards in this class. You want to be moving through your deck so you can keep controlling the outside cards of your hand and cycling through these cheap cards to move an Outland card to the Outland.
The Outland card.
Outcast.
Outcast, sorry.
Yeah, and it's ways to potentially stop, 8 to 9 to 10 mana OTKs if you like have different things. Like, eventually I'm sure Demon Hunter is going to get a way to play slow, because that seems to be the thing that Team 5 really likes to develop. They like to give multiple archetypes ranging from aggressive to defensive. So if you do have like a slower defensive deck, this could be a way for you to stave off at least a turn or two from any like big 10 mana 30 damage kills.
I feel like
Go ahead.
I feel like it's more likely you see Mana Burn in a faster deck that's trying to disrupt, like a faster deck that's using stuff like Feast of Souls for card draw, so you can afford to have kind of a dead card until you want to play it to disrupt your opponent's reactive turn to what you're doing. I think that like a combo type deck or like a control type deck is gonna like struggle to be able to use this effectively, because your games are largely going to be contingent on like taking longer to do whatever it is that you're doing, and like finding the appropriate window for a card like this is more difficult.
Yeah, I definitely thought the same thing too, because it was kind of like we were talking about the Lotheb effect, and then I just realized that I want to make every card deal damage in Demon Hunter when I play aggressive decks. And so what I did was I actually put the Mana Burn in like a Highlander deck, and what I did is I used Mana Burn on like turn 2 or turn 3, and they couldn't develop. So it actually gave me time to give me like some time to set up and play more of a mid-range strategy, and I used it to shut off the early game development. So I think there's totally like that validity. Maybe I'm just using it wrong, or maybe everyone's just like building bad decks.
It's Kibler thinks it's going to be used in aggro. Frodan thinks it's going to be used in control, and I don't think it's going to be used at all.
I'm not saying I'm saying if it is used, that's where I see it being used, and yeah. But I definitely think one of the keys is that you want to play this in a deck that like actually has significant card draw capabilities, because you can't afford to have a deck that's like looking to assemble like a lethal, like critical massive damage that draws this card when you need it to draw and then actually kills your opponent. So
I tend to side more with Kibler. Well, both of you guys have decent points, but the one thing I want to bring attention to is 2 mana crystals is more impactful the earlier in the game, because it's a larger percent of your opponent's available mana. When it's 100% of their available mana, it really limits their options a lot. When it's only 20% of their available mana, it doesn't limit them nearly as much.
Yep, totally fair. And I guess we'll just have to wait to see what's. There's also just want to give a little shout out to the card on the far right, the Rascal Naga. That was a card I was talking about, some token-based synergy. It's basically Juggler, but in the form, instead of summoning, it's in the form of minions dying. And we saw a lot of people try to make that card a core carry of the deck, but I wasn't really seeing too much success with it. So I'm looking forward to see if the deck builders can make it work.
I do want to say that Umberwing and Twin Slice both seem super strong to me. Just like they're kind of like unassuming if you just look at them, like a 2-cost 1/2 weapon, but like that's like a mini muster for battle, right? And then Twin Slice is super powerful. It's a 0-cost card that like can trigger your it's like backstab if you want it to be. You just play it twice and attack into something. So it's 0-cost, deal 2. That you can split up how you want, that can help trigger any kind of attack trigger thing, like the Satyr Overseer or whatever we saw before, or the 7/4 that deals 4. Just 0-cost deal damage or attack trigger or whatever, and you get 2 copies of it. I think that card is just like quietly super good.
Okay, yeah, no, I like.
I agree with that,
especially in an aggressive class that can capitalize on. Makes sense. We have, I believe, a couple more cards to quickly glance over for the 30, or the ones that's at least been revealed to us so far. We have Raging Fellscreamer and Wrathspike Brute.
Demon Consort.
And do we have anything like the Wrathspike Brute in Hearthstone?
I don't know.
We had a guy that hurls axes.
Yeah,
But
Axe Slinger.
That's pretty
But
different.
this is all enemies.
Yeah, this is all enemies, not
Planet
just your
Stack.
opponent.
This is like
I thought
super
all
anti-swarmy.
Yeah.
This card
It's
is
interesting.
surprisingly very effective when I was playing against it. When I played an aggressive strat, we were playing Demon Hunter Mirrors nonstop during the playtest.
It was basically all you saw,
In particular, like wrecking a lot of the fast-paced strategies because it was just hard to get through it. So the stats don't look that impressive, but if you have to attack into it twice, it's already very powerful because it's dealing like a consecration worth of damage to all of your minions.
And 6 health is a really nice amount of health for a taunt as well. We have a lot of 4 health and a lot of 5 health taunts, and we have a lot of 4 damage and a lot of 5 damage removal. We don't got a whole lot of 6 damage removal, so this thing's probably getting hit at least once, or most likely twice, right? So this could be kind of annoying to get through. That card might be better than I first thought about it.
Yeah,
The best part says all enemies, which goes to your opponent's face.
oh yeah. When I first looked at this, I was like, oh, like it's only good against like a bunch of like little dudes, but it's like actually it's good against like any board of multiple minions.
Yeah.
Unless they're attacking and killing this with like one big thing, it's gonna like decimate their board, right? Like it has 6 health for 5, which isn't like crazy high, but like against any kind of deck that's playing significant stuff to the board, I think that card's very powerful.
Whew. It is 5:30 p.m. in California. We are at the last 30 minutes, boys, of the show. We have the rest of the classes to review for Ashes of Outland. But we got, a lot to go through. So we'll go through as we usually do, which is alphabetically, starting off with Druid. Although,
Yeah, we got some more demons.
oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Is this new, fresh off the press? No,
They're
it's
fresh off the press, man.
the graphics are a little scuffed. We apologize for it, but I mean,
Slightly scuffed.
free entertainment.
Oh my god, cheer up.
We have the imprisoned. I don't know how to pronounce that. Antian, which is dormant for 2 turns, and when this awakens, deals 10 damage randomly split amongst all enemies, and then soul split, which is choose a friendly demon. So I'm gonna copy of it. The imprisoned Antian. This demon is absolutely absurd. Even though it's like a kind of a big investment, you do 5 mana, play nothing. When it does awaken and you don't have a dominant position on the board, it is such a big thing. Think about like Reno, the Relicologist, and how important that is, just to have the 10 damage being dealt. The only thing is that Antian can go face.
Wait. You're saying this like it's a bad thing. You're like, can go face. If they have no minions, it's a Pyroblast for 5, dude.
You're entirely right. If there's like 5 health on the board, it does 5 damage to them and 5 to face. I'm just saying that if you do need to clear the board, sometimes it left some awkward breakpoints and then it kind of got itself killed. But that happens very infrequently. And this card was like dominating a lot of mid games. So I think this imprisoned. How do I pronounce this, Kibler?
I don't know. Antaeans?
Antaean.
That's how I would pronounce it.
It was very
right.
That card was very impressive in a lot of the games where we're playing it during the summit. It is, I think, something that like the fact that you spend 5 mana and do nothing right until 2 turns later is a pretty big deal. If you're actually playing against another aggressive deck, it's horrific because you spend 5 mana and do nothing right now. But like if like both players are doing stuff like this or playing like slower kind of controlling type decks, they don't have a lot of stuff in the board, then yeah, the card is really, really strong.
Yeah, I also played against somebody that when they woke up did like 8 damage to my face, even though I had like 6 health on the board, and then they had like lethal. It was just one of those moments where I was like, oh my goodness, I can just imagine the Cholton highlights now. So yeah, this card, definitely look out for it to be a high impact, at least from our initial testing. I'm sure that's be a lot of other.
The dormant mechanic's pretty cool. It creates little mini objectives within the game and mini little board states that are different than normal Hearthstone, right? Because normal Hearthstone, you're playing against your opponent, your matchup, your thing. You're either the control deck or the aggressor or whatever. But then when this comes down, now all of a sudden you have to reevaluate how you think about the board, how you think about the game, because now you're setting up for in 2 turns from now when this effect pops, I need to be set up. Well, maybe I can absorb all this face damage and I'm fine. So I hold back my minions and try and just take the damage to the face and outvalue them. Or maybe I can't afford to take 10 face damage and I try and develop as many minions going into the turn when it pops so that I'm not going to die. So I like how it makes little different goals in the game. I don't know. I'm pretty interested by the dormant mechanic. And it's hard to say exactly how it'll pan out, but it seems pretty cool compared to some of the other mechanics we've had in the past.
Yeah, it sets up like an interesting mid-game like mini game where like people are like, in 2 turns this will happen no matter what. Because once a minion becomes dormant, and for people who don't know, dormant is like an intangible. You can't interact with it. It takes up a minion slot on the board, but it doesn't do anything. It's just kind of like this this little portal thing it's about to summon. And then in 2 turns it awakens. It's almost like it got played, so it'll have the summoning sickness. It can't attack immediately unless you give it charge. And so it's really funny watching players battle with 2 turns to be like, I need as much health on the board as possible, or just like, screw it, I'm just going to try to aggro him down so it doesn't matter. He's going to be too far behind on the race. Or even just like set up so you have 6 attacks you can readily trade into the Antaean, which Celestion's in chat correcting our pronunciation.
It's pretty cool mechanic. I've always thought of Hearthstone, like whenever I've cast it or something like that, I always think of it as there's many phases to every single matchup and every single game. And when certain things are happening, one player is setting up to deal with, such and such 2/3 with text by turn 2, or such and such 5/5 on turn 5 needs to be dealt with. So throughout the game, there's always these phases, and this more outlines that clearly. So I think it'll be pretty cool, and it also changes it too. Adds more layers to the phases of the game.
There is a good question in chat wondering if this is part of the evolve pool. I believe that's like the similar question for interactions. It would be a very big bummer to mutate or evolve into this and then get like a dormant minion. I don't know the answer for that. Maybe some of the designers in chat who are.
Well, would it be dormant or wouldn't it just be a 10/6?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, it will come into play dormant and then it will awake later. Like,
what if you evolve into it though? You haven't played it, you've summoned it.
Correct. It doesn't. It's not a battle cry. It's just it comes to play dormant and then it's like awakens 2 turns later. Period.
All right, I'll take your word on that. I didn't actually see that interaction, so I don't know for sure, but it does make sense based on what you said.
Interesting.
Okay, are those all of our Demon Hunter cards? So we should just do them all while we can.
Early Metamorphosis.
Ooh.
Delayed Pyroblast.
Yeah. You can trade with it though, right?
What?
You can trade with your pyro halves.
This was I had in the game on the stream, the reveal stream. This is a very powerful card. It's a legendary spell for one, which is sort of interesting because there are legendary spells that aren't like the big dramatic legendary spells from Boomsday. They're just like, this is just a spell that's legendary. And this one is very powerful in my very limited experience because you can just like blow someone up with it over 2 turns, or you can use it for like very effective board control. It's kind of expensive, the first shot, obviously, but your hero power remains 1 mana. So it's like 5 to do to flip, and then 1 more to use it, and then 1 to use it the next turn.
Yeah, so in a way, it's not. I mean, it's more expensive in some ways because it takes you a while to get there, but at the same time, you can get it online quicker. So definitely a really powerful finisher. It finished a ton of games in our sessions. So I think that if you're not impressed by this card because you're like, oh, legendary spell should be like, Luna's Pocket Galaxy. Be careful. This card can really end.
I don't think spells in general should be like Luna's Pocket Galaxy.
Yeah, let's just never do that again ever.
I do. Speaking of just randomly, like, it's very funny to me that Luna's Pocket Galaxy saw like no play, then got buffed, and then got nerfed, and now just still see tons of play. Like after it's like people realized, holy cow, this is so powerful. We should have been.
It was broken the whole time, and we didn't know.
Well, I really think that's just a great indication of like people kind of like, oh, this is a good card, this is a bad card. People just thought that was a bad card, didn't play it, and then when like it got buffed, people were like, maybe I'll try it. It's oh my god, it's so powerful. And then they realized, wait, that effect is worth paying 7 for.
Yeah, to be fair though, like a lot of cards came out that did work with it, like a lot.
You're right. Sense that we perhaps overlook certain cards, and I think like cards like this, Metamorphosis, are also, in my opinion, very strong.
Yeah,
this is a good card. Yeah.
So I think now is that all the Demon Hunter cards? Okay, great.
The class looks nuts. Demon Hunter seems crazy powerful, which it has to be, right? It's the new thing. If it's weak, then nobody cares. We're not making any hype. But Demon Hunter is going to come out making the big noise, man. That class seems good.
Yeah, and I'm totally okay with that because this is the first time they've released a new class, and expect like 100% accuracy in terms of their power level is kind of absurd. But at the same time, they even have been very open and communicative about balance and win rates, and they've been changing it more frequently. So I'm sure if it gets way out of control, they'll give it a little tap or two. So that's our Demon Hunter review. Let's go into the other classes.
We did this Pit Commander, the 7/9 who summons another demon each turn. 7/9 taunt for 9.
At the end of your turn, yeah. 7/9 taunt.
That guy's sweet. I really like.
He's an epic too, so you could run 2 in your deck.
Yeah.
If one pulls the other one, does the other one pull another demon?
No, because it has like it triggers at the start of your like end phase sort of thing or whatever.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
But yeah,
Don't
that
have
card
it.
I think it's sweet.
But that card is a very big chunky boy.
Yes.
All right, cool. So with Druid, we have one of the legendaries revealed. It's the Arcspore Mishfin. It's 3-mana, 3/4 taunt. Death Rattle, shuffle Mishfin Prime into your deck. And then Mishfin Prime is a 10-mana 9/9 that summons that you can choose to summon a giant with taunt or rush.
Or both, right? Quest.
I don't know how to evaluate it off the top of my head.
Generally, like I think the primes are pretty interesting in that they kind of, I mean, they're obviously very similar to like Storm Guardian, right? That was basically exactly this sort of effect. Was you get a small thing or a medium-sized thing that gets you a really big thing. But I really like the fact that they like let you have these big, dramatic, highly impactful minions that you couldn't actually put into your deck, right? Like you wouldn't make like 10-mana 9/9 summon a 9/9 like with taunt or rush on both of them. And some of the other ones are even like more outlandish, but they have like a decent initial form and then like just a really dramatic, powerful later form, and I think it's really cool.
So Quest still exists, right? There's not like that's not going away yet.
Correct.
So, and then Flabidinous Floop, because I'm seeing some Quest Druid. Is that's going away?
Well, Floop is going away. Floop is in Boomsday.
Oh, I was gonna say you could get some. Do the 3-mana one, get the guy in your deck, play it, floop it after doing the quest. That is some power.
Well, you don't get that much more from the quest, right? You just get rush and taunt. So like the additional power you're getting off the quest is literally a keyword.
Oh, in my head it was making another 9/9.
No, it's not summon a 9/9 and summon a 9/9 with rush. It's summon I assume. Maybe I'm wrong, but like my guess is that it would be summon a 9/9 and that gain rush, gain taunt.
Well, that unexcites my quest theory.
Maybe I'm wrong, but that seems like it's unlike. And Celestial in the chat says that I'm correct. So
all right, well, rip Quest Druid dreams.
At least for that specific combo.
Yeah.
And I think that like when you look at cards like this, one of the things that I feel like I was experimenting with was like a taunt Death Rattle Druid deck in general, because I played like Lucent Bark, and Lucent Bark is like one of my favorite Druid archetypes just to annoy the heck out of everybody. And so Arcspore Mishfin kind of fits a little bit into that archetype because you can like play Arcspore, then faceless it, or do other things like that. So it was very fun to play. It wasn't super good because everyone was killing me with Demon Hunter, but I don't know if it's because I'm not necessarily super in tune with the expansion. We only had like a couple hours. Looking at Fungal Fortunes, we've seen Book of Specters for Mage. This is a different take on it. It's draw 3 cards, discard any minions drawn instead of discarding any spells. And Druid, we've seen like Druid have a ton of very good spells in their deck that really want to use things. We're talking about like the Breath of Dreams into Nourish type combinations, or Embiggen even. Does this fit into those decks, you think, Firebat?
See that card, my mind immediately jumps towards Malagos related combo things. Those have had a lot of spells, but any Druid deck I'd say has probably been half or slightly more than half spells for a while now. So I think this is most likely going to be a pretty impactful card that allows you to do some sweet combo-y things in Druid.
Yeah, and I think it clearly indicates there'll be more spell Druid type stuff, right? Obviously, even just like as Firebat was saying, most Druid decks that are combo-ish have major spell elements. It's worth noting though that this is a dangerous card if you want to try and play like Malagos Druid, right? Like you can't risk Fungal Fortunes and like, oh look, I discarded Malagos, guess I lose. Like so that I think makes
risk it and just put it. That's your win rate. Then that's something you have to factor.
You gotta live dangerously.
High risk, high reward.
Yeah,
you'll never do that, and then it happens in the first game you build it. That's what happened to the stream. Speaking of Malagos, though, you kind of mentioned that like Imprisoned Satyr does look like an opportunity to maybe think about some combo decks, because you can inflate a minion into your hand in 2 turns and make it discount by 5.
Mm-hmm. And Mechathoon's going away, right?
Yes, because Mechathoon was
okay. Yeah, I thought so. Because Fungal Fortunes and Imprisoned Satyr could potentially be pretty cool with Mechathoon decks. Because Mechathoon decks, sometimes discarding cards is good. Because then you don't have to play them to get rid of them.
Make hand space, yeah, for sure. Okay, so I think we don't have that many Druid cards. In fact, we don't have that many class cards in general because reveal season has just begun, given the fact that we're just a day after the announcement. So we'll move on to what's next? Is this Hunter that we have?
Boom, Hunter.
This card looks nuts.
Yeah, this carding is sweet.
If you like choose only very specific beasts in your deck, like the ones with Lifesteal and Rush, and then you play this, you're very happy with your investment.
Or charge.
Right. Or charge.
Your deck only contains King Crush. You're like, all right, I'm in.
But yeah, this could make mid-range Hunter come back to being a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Scale Height doesn't rotate,
Scale
right?
Height is going to be gone, yeah. So you won't.
Oh, jeez. Darn it. Well, there needs to be another Lifesteal Rush beast, otherwise I'm way less excited. But this has the potential to do stuff like if Scale Height did exist. So there's room for this card to be bonkers.
Mm-hmm. These kinds of effects in general are very good in card games, period. It says draw specifically something that you can isolate.
And buff it, yeah.
Next one we have is Mage. We have Imprisoned Observer, another dormant card. When this awakens, deal 2 damage to all enemy minions, but it's overstatted, so it's a 3-mana 4/5. So you have to wait for that payoff. Kibler, you played a ton of these kinds of Mage decks that would use these effects. Does this fit in like that Highlander style?
I think this feels like a tough card for like a number of reasons. One is just like when you want AoE, you want AoE like now, right? Like this is a really tough card to like draw, and then like okay, you're just gonna like a lot of decks when you're trying to defend yourself, you really need to be able to defend yourself right away. And spending 3 mana and not immediately impacting the board is like a pretty big cost in a lot of those decks. Granted, like if this is your turn, you can if you play this exactly turn 3 against an aggressive deck, I think it is quite good. But I think that it becomes way worse the later on the game gets because the impact of this, if you're not able to play it on time, becomes that much lower as the game goes on. So I don't think this seems great to me.
I agree with a lot of the points you're making about like needing AoE when you need it. But then also your Mage, so you can use this card kind of like as a Doomsayer, right? Mm-hmm. Like a worse, uglier Doomsayer. That
excuse me, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It only has the one eye, I guess. It's not really a beholder, but
this looks like distant cousin.
On curve, this card is nuts. Like early game, if you coin this dude, the aggro deck is just like, I might as well concede. This is horrible. So, and then you have later on, you can combine it with Frost Nova or Blizzard or something to then kind of do stuff. So, I don't know. Maybe this could be good. It seems like a Doomsayer kind of thing, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, someone in chat said, we're discussing the card art. I guess it's time to move on. So.
The one game...
That's a rule of Omnistone.
That was a rule, yeah.
That's true. We have a tradition. Next class. We have...
I haven't seen this.
Card. This is actually fresh off the show. It's a 3-mana 2/2. Dragonmaw Overseer. At the end of your turn, give another friendly minion +2/+2. So indefinite buffs the longer you keep it on the board.
This is like a Shadow Ascendant bro. He's like a beefier Shadow Ascendant.
Mm-hmm. Sure. It kind of looks to me like another like battle card or something.
Does look like
This
a
is definitely higher than tier 3 in Battlegrounds. It's Iron
Sure.
Sensei for anything.
Yeah. I don't know how to evaluate that because Priest has changed so much that I
Right.
can't really
Well,
say.
I feel like Shadow Ascendant was like very good in any kind of proactive priest type deck, but this is like bigger effect than Shadow Ascendant, but harder to like both keep around because it costs more and like get value out of because it costs more, right?
Right.
But if you stick something, this is immediately like a +2/+2 that if everyone doesn't kill, you just keep building on it. So like it has the potential if you play like an early, especially like a taunt, right? Like play an injured Tol'Vir into this. If everyone doesn't kill your injured Tol'Vir, you're like, okay, injured Tol'Vir, Dragon Maw, obviously, you're like, this is a place to use the 0-cost Shattered or Powered Shield, right? Like I will keep this alive, and it is really valuable to keep it alive.
Yeah, and also like even more important than Northshire Cleric, other cards like that don't necessarily aren't as available to Priest because this curve Northshire Cleric into the Overseer would be disgusting.
Yeah, if Priest gets some good 1-drops, they can be very scary because they also have the 2-mana 2/3 give 2 health now as well. So they have a ton of stuff for potentially just curving out and dominating, but not very many good 1-drops landed on. They have like what, Light Warden? And that's it.
Light Warden. They could also play things like the Battle Mage and stuff like that. Bonsam is rotating out, I believe, because it's part of Rastakon's Rumble.
Correct.
So you play like that fast 1-mana stuff with Amet.
The problem with the Priest board control decks now, though, is the Mind Blast is gone, Divine Spirit Interfire is gone, and their card draw engine is gone. So how do they end the game / capitalize on this early lead?
New cards.
Always do. Board death.
They need a finisher still. You gotta have something.
Well, we'll have to see. I think we had another side of Priest card. Oh, that was the new cards that got replaced. That was replacing the old ones that were rotating. Okay, let's pull up the next class. What do we have on deck here? So we have Rogue. Rogue is getting secrets again. So we have 2-mana ambush. Secret, after your opponent plays a minion, summon a 2/3 ambusher with poison. So the King Cobra effect or the
Emperor Cobra.
Yeah, the Emperor Cobra. King Cobra, same. After your opponent plays a minion, so you summon a 2/3 ambusher with poisonous. This is like pretty disruptive to a lot of plans, and Rogue does make sense with a lot of. It's a class that has secrets, so I like that they're bringing it back. I did kind of miss that from the Kobolds and Catacombs, but it doesn't really have that much of an impact except for evasion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that both the specific secrets that Rogues got and the fact that they only had a set they got secrets in made it so that you couldn't really do that much with secrets in Rogue. The fact that this is coming in the first set of a year makes me think that there's going to be a lot more secret support for Rogue throughout the year, so you can actually build on that, which I think is like a much better place than just like here have some secrets in a set at the end of a year.
Yeah.
There was another card that was real. Oh, sorry, Kyle, you want to talk more about this card?
I was gonna say, I see a lot of people saying in chat that this card kind of sucks, and I had a kind of the opposite reaction. I thought this card was pretty good. If you play this card on turn 2, for example, you're just killing your opponent's 3-drop for 2 mana. So that's already a W for me right there. You're gaining 1 mana worth of tempo. Let's go. But if they're some sort of control deck, let's say they're Mage, then they have to they're doing their turn 3 play. They're like AI, whatever. Then turn 4 rolls around. They want to play their 4-drop. Your 2-drops trading for their 4-drop, or they have to play a minion to proc it to be, out of its, hidey bush or wherever it's hiding for its ambush. And then now it's on the field and they can actually attack it. But they have to spend a minion's worth of mana, then remove it. So it's really going to take away an entire turn from someone during the first, developing stages of the game, where the game's the most snowbally. So I think this card's quite good.
Was also, speaking of synergistic cards, people in chat are saying there was a 1-mana 1/2 that was revealed. That is, if you control a secret, sap something, it costs them 2 more to replay it.
Yeah.
So it's a targeted freezing trap for 1 mana if you have a secret already, which seems very powerful from a tempo perspective.
I saw that card. It seems fun. Like 1 mana sap, make it cost 2 more. And the reason why it's so insane is because now, like, it's a very cheap combo enabler. Sap has been in and out of some rogue list from time to time because they felt like having 2 of was too inefficient and it was a little bit pricey relative to the amount of combos and tempo they want to squeeze in. 1 mana. It's so cheap. But at the same time, it's at the cost of deck building and putting secrets in your deck,
Right.
which, as they were talking about, early game, this ambush is great. Late game, is it super important? Probably not.
No,
So,
it's pretty bad late game.
hard to say. I will tease people. I'm not going to tell because I do think I know all the secrets for the set. All of them are really annoying. All of them are super annoying. Really, really annoying. I like when a rogue played a secret. I was like, God, this is so frustrating.
Yeah, and
So,
that's one of the important things is one of the important things about secrets and having them be threatening is kind of like putting you sort of in an awkward spot of like, okay, if you want to play around 1, it's tough, to play, play possibly into others. It's like, the like snake trap versus explosive trap versus freezing trap is like, what do I do, right? Trying to actually find the correct way to navigate any given board state, and having them, kind of put you in that like pincher type move, I think is important for making them tough. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a lot of shaman cards. Looks like coming up next. So wow, we can just kind of take our pick of the litter here. So Firebat, anything that stands out to you here?
Well, I don't like evolve effects that much, and there's a lot of those. Especially hearing about this dormant thing is going to evolve into a bunch of dormant stuff that can't attack and then die. It's going to be a bummer. Lady Vosh looks pretty cool.
Yeah, so Lady Vosh is one of those. Sorry, reading the cards to make sure I had the text right. Lady Vosh combines with the Prime cards you see on the far right. So Vosh Prime is obviously the spell damage, but drawing the 3 cards and reducing their cost by 3. We're playing decks that kind of do that right now in the form of Galakron Rogue, and we already know how that can be super good. And you're talking about combo decks. Lady Vosh seems like a combo player's dream scenario to be able to draw and reduce their cost of their spells. So definitely very exciting for the combo.
Yeah,
I like the evolve cards. The fact that these are actually evolve things. I mean, I always have a soft spot for them.
Okay.
I don't know that they're necessarily good. They probably aren't. And if they are good, it's probably, kind of bad for the game in the form like when we saw with Evolve coming back with Desert Hair. I always have fun playing those sort of decks when they're like on the fringes of playability.
Great streamer.
Sure. Exactly. Like the Bog Spike Knuckles, I think is cool because like it's a evolve effect you can kind of like lock and load, right? Like you can set that up for a turn and then spend all your mana playing out stuff to evolve rather than having to have the extra mana.
I don't know, man. I'm still just scarred inside from the one
Desert
evolve
Hair.
Meta. Yeah.
Desert Hair Evolve with like Mogu Flesh Shaper was a
holy
nightmare.
Smokes. Yeah.
I just didn't play Constructed then, so I just stopped. It was that bad.
Time heals all wounds, Firebat. You'll soon enough. There's gonna be some Redditor out there and be like, remember how this meta is the worst meta ever. I'd much rather play the Evolved Shaman meta with Mogu. That matchup actually took skill. That's like the best part when people like try to go back in time and like retroactively rewrite history, how good a metagame was. They'll always say like, "Oh, this matchup actually took skill compared to today. You just don't do it. You just plop your cards and
everything takes a little bit of skill. It's just some takes more, some takes less. But I don't know. Literally everything you do, you can do slightly more skillfully. It depends how much you want to optimize for that 0.001%. Like you could just like eat pizza more skillfully. Like this. If you really want to nitpick all the details, there's a proper way to do everything a little teeny bit better.
I got some pizza advice from Ben Brode this week. Actually,
see,
he
That's what I'm talking about.
Advised me that this like famous deep dish place in Chicago actually you can just order their frozen pizza delivered, and I think it's going to be here like today or tomorrow. So. Given that we're like stuck here in like quarantine or whatever, I'm gonna have some delicious pizza that came recommendation from Ben Brode. So.
See, very skillful pizza.
High skill pizza eating.
You gotta pass me that link. I need to order some pizza. My fridge is chock full, but my freezer. Now the chat's thinking about pizza. It's almost time to wrap up the show. Let's go ahead and look at these last couple of classes. We got Warlock and Warrior remaining. Warlock, we got Dark Portal and Shadow Council. Dark Portal, draw a minion if you have at least 8 cards in hand. It costs 5 less. And then Shadow Council, replace your hand with random demons, give them +2/+2. Shadow Council sounded like kind of a meme card, and then I believe it was Hearthstone Trump kept playing this deck over and over and over again, insisting that it was like the best deck in the game within the first hour of playing it. So pretty sure that means Shadow Council is unplayable.
Okay.
But I obviously those are the two polar extremes. I don't know how to evaluate them. They just look like pretty fun cards to try.
They seem pretty fun. Yeah, Dark Portal is like a really bad mountain giant. Like, I don't know. He tap, play Dark Portal, play the card that you get off Dark Portal. I don't know. It's probably best used when you actually discount something really big, right? So you go tap, the discount a 9-drop to be able to cost a reasonable amount and play that
like
the following
tap.
turn.
Get my Malagos.
Yeah, something like that.
Mentioned Mechathune War like that. I mean, this obviously won't be able to be played with Mechathune Warlock in Standard, but for the wild people or even for like any kind of replacement that we might see, when it says draw a minion, that's like the most powerful part of this text that you can kind of like tutor it out specifically, and because there will things like the quest and the shuffling mechanics still be in Warlock?
The quests are still around. But Plot Twist, I believe, rotates.
Ooh,
which is the saddest thing that I think I've ever said in my life.
We have whiz bang petitions for the classic set. Why not Plot Twist?
What set is Plot Twist? It's from Rise of Shadows. No, it's still around, right? Okay. Rise of Shadows, yeah.
Great. Wow, the meme still lives on then. We have one last class. We have Warrior. We have the legendary.
Wait, one quick question. Can you Dark Portal Jaraxxus? That's a minion, technically, right?
Yeah, you can. You can turn 5 Jaraxxus just like I did in my video. I actually got Jaraxxus off of Bandersmosh and played it in turn 5.
Oh, sick. Now you can do that more consistently.
It was glorious.
You could make a deck and have your only minion in your whole deck be Jaraxxus.
So your entire planet is just Jaraxxus turn 5?
You just full mulligan for Dark Portal, tap a few times, you get to see what, like 9 cards out of the 30?
And then after that, you can Shadow Council all of your like garbage spells into demons that will serve Jaraxxus, Eridar, Lord of the Burning Legion. We have a deck. We broke it.
I like that you believe that you won't just get killed by the Enteian that pops up from the dormant the next turn and kills Jaraxxus almost immediately.
Turn 5 Jaraxxus, though. That's pretty nifty.
It does sound pretty dope.
It is pretty dangerous to play a deck that's built around playing Jaraxxus on turn 5 in a format with Zephyrus for Sack Pact. That might not be the best overall plan.
It'd be cool, though.
It would be sweet.
I don't know.
I was going to say something to said in chat. If only we had the Who's Meme Reigns Supreme time. That would definitely for sure.
They should make it so Sack Pact doesn't kill Jaraxxus, so that we can Dark Portal Jaraxxus.
Yes, that's why we should do it. For sure. We have the Warrior cards to talk about real quick. We'll call it for this show here because we're almost out of time. We have the Warrior Legendary Kargoth Blade Fist, 4-mana 4/4, shuffled Kargoth Prime into your deck. And then Kargoth Prime has Rush. Whenever this attacks and kills a minion, gain 10 armor.
Well, that card's going in my deck.
That card's sick. I mean, it's a 4/4 Rush for 4 to start, right? Like, that's like a totally reasonable card. And then it puts like, get back in the board and survive like into your deck too. That card is serious.
Very good. Very good.
And then Bulwark of Azzinoth, I don't know how good this card is. I do like that you can hit people with the spikes on your shield. It has one attack. But I think obviously if there's like big burst damage combo decks, that can be a powerful card. And I also just I like the nostalgia of it, right? Anyone who played Burning Crusade in World of Warcraft remembers that was like the sought after tank shield for everyone. And it's like, I remember that name. I remember everyone wanting that. It's just cool.
Does Kargath Prime work with sweeping strikes? Would you get triple?
I don't know. I would guess so. Probably.
If it
30 armor.
I don't see why not. It says whenever. Whenever is unconditional.
That's a lot of armor.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth putting sweeping strikes in your deck, but it makes you think about it.
Maybe if Specialist was still around as a format, Firebat.
But you
that would be in your sideboard for sure in Specialist.
Discovered off of a lackey.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be a tilter. You get the warrior down to 1, he gains 30 off of a randomly generated card.
Chat in chat, Celestial in chat said that it does not work. It's only if it attacks and kills a minion, not just if it kills, and it only attacked the one minion. It deals damage to the others, but didn't attack them. So,
what if you play it and your opponent has a lot of things on board, and then they play Mass Hysteria, and then they all run into the Kargath Prime?
It's only when it attacks.
It has to attack.
It's only its attack. Okay.
Yeah.
How do I gain 500 armor in one turn?
I don't know.
Probably not this card. There's probably like the Armor Smith stuff that you could do with the Skipper. And probably not. Probably not.
There's no way to double dip on this guy's effect because he's good, but imagine doing it twice. Then he becomes amazing.
I'm sure there's ways you can do it twice if you can try to find ways to get multiple Kargath Bladefists onto the board, or just have ways to copy it. I don't remember every opportunity to copy it off the top of my head outside of like maybe Kargath Faceless, but I'm sure there's other shenanigans out there to make the meme a reality. Okay, so with that, we are out of cards, I believe, unless there's any stragglers. Oh, actually, I apologize. There's neutral cards that we haven't covered. One of them being Kael'thas, Sunstrider. Every third card you cast each turn costs 0. So this one's out now.
That is sweet.
It's super cool. When I first saw it, I thought it was just the third spell you play, but it's every third spell, So it's the 3rd, the 6th, the 9th, the 12th, so on and so forth. So you could actually keep chaining 0 mana spells and doing things with it. They get, especially in Mage, it gets really weird.
Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Druid with Forbiddenness Floops Gloop. That gets absolutely absurd because you gain mana when you're killing stuff and then you just keep going. And it just gets insane.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that Kael'thas isn't necessarily allowed for the Masters Tour this week, and I believe it would, because I think it would lead to some degenerate opportunities.
But it's awesome.
But it is pretty awesome. I do kind of.
I've been playing some Kael'thas Shaman that I like have Spirit of the Frog and a bunch of cheap spells and stuff, and then Eye of the Storm and Storm Chasers. So like the deck can because Kael'thas doesn't have to be in play. It's just the third spell you cast in a turn. So you can actually on turn 5 coin, zap, Kael'thas, Eye of the Storm, and that's pretty fun. You just put 3, 5, 6s and a 4, 7 on the board, and then they still have to kill your Kael'thas to stop you from possibly doing it again next turn with spell, Eye of the Storm or whatever. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, maybe it's an opportunity to utilize cards that we're not thinking about. Kind of meme and Priest for having very cheap cards with 0 mana cards, but maybe you can do something real silly with it. I don't know. Kael'thas opens up a bunch of possibilities, and I'm sure like Highlander decks could find a way to squeeze it right now, but I'm sure there's even better decks that can.
I was using it to make the old Mecha'thun warrior used to have to do like Malagoses and Inner Ages and stuff. Now with this guy, you just go Boom Ship, Whirlwind, and then 5 mana kill the board. So you remove 2 combo cards from that combo. So instead of a 5-card combo, it's just a 3-card combo. It made Mecha'thun warrior a whole lot better, but still not great. But way better than it was before.
What do you think about Terran Gorefield? 3 mana, 3/4 legendary. Battle cry, destroy all friendly minions to death rattle. Resummon them.
And this guy's really interesting if you're playing like a Death Rattle deck. If you have I don't know if there's any like play dead type effects that exist in standard right now. I don't think there are, but this is basically a play dead effect for like you kill all your Death Rattles, and then you can like resummon them when you kill him and get all their Death Rattle triggers again and again. Great in battlegrounds, you kill your you kill your bombs and your eggs, and
the card seems really powerful. It might run into issues with board space.
Yeah,
that could be a really limiting factor at this kind of effect. Because you
Yeah.
want to have the effect happen more than once, but then you're like, well, I can only have 7 minions if out though.
Does the what is it? The shadowy figure rotate? The 2/2 copy a death
priest.
rattle guy?
The Rise of Shadows card.
I think he might be a Rise of Shadows guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, could be sweet.
Could be sweet.
Yeah, there's definitely some combos. And it's very open-ended, so that's what we want to see in terms of some of these legendaries, which you can go in a bunch of different decks. And I'm looking forward to it. No love for the Morik Artificer, right?
He's I don't know. I can't really think of what you do with him exactly. If your opponent has a Wrath Fiend, it lets you really shield slam their face.
Yeah, it's your opponent gets this effect too, right?
Right.
That
It's
seems
good.
like
Yeah,
a
it could be
bummer.
good with like cheap removal stuff, but like I guess if you're playing something like Rogue with like Backstab Vendetta, right? Like you have a lot of really efficient ways to hit your opponent's minions. It's good against decks that don't necessarily have spell-based removal.
Oh, you're right. This could
you
come
can-
off of a Faceless Lackey, and then just
Oh, it
like
can,
a
yeah.
bunch of shenanigans just happen from it. Oh, goodness.
I mean, you can possibly combo it with like AoEs, right? Like this with like Arcane Explosion or Consecration or something to like give you cheap big AoEs. Feels like the sort of card that like you don't just build a deck around. You're like, okay, I need a way to like deal with this particular situation that comes up frequently in a metagame, and this is the best way to do it, kind of.
For sure. Definitely a very
It's also just a 2/4 for 2, which like is pretty big.
It is big.
He's very good against like minion heavy decks. That I think is also just a thing. If like people are playing decks that don't have a lot of spell based removal, he's just a good card.
Yeah.
Some like good versus like Zoo.
Right.
Lots to think about. The more I think about this card, the more I think it's pretty clever. I do agree with somebody in the chat saying that it seems like a pretty unique take on spell damage. All right, so those are all the cards that we have, and so I guess there's only one question left: was this very handsome gentleman correct? Was the hype worth it? And I guess I might be asking a biased crowd because of Kibler and Firebat, but actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead and hear from the panel. Kibler, what do you think about the future of Hearthstone? Does this statement hold up?
I mean, I'm super hyped. I think this is the most excited I've been coming out of like a series of announcements about Hearthstone's future ever. There's more cool new stuff that they've announced, and more cool new stuff that's coming like right now, right? Like there was already a big patch yesterday with a bunch of Battleground stuff in Kael'thas, and like the patch that adds the duplicate stuff and all this preparation for the new expansion. That's next week. Then the expansion is the week after that. So it's not just like an announcement of an announcement. It's like, here's an announcement. By the way, this is all happening immediately, which is crazy.
Yeah, I think it does live up to the hype. And one of the big things I want to touch on is they said they're adding more game modes on a similar scale to Battlegrounds, which I don't know if you guys noticed. Battlegrounds kind of a big deal. So more game modes of that size, that's a pretty big big thing to say, and it's going to be hard to live up to making something as big of an impact as Battlegrounds has been. And if they're able to really do that, that would be crazy.
I think so. I mean, at least that they're trying is the most important. And I think the same thing, we see them experimenting with things like buffs or mid expansions coming out in the middle of the cycle. I like that they're experimenting all different kinds of directions, and I'm much more willing to forgive that than potentially being too afraid to do anything, because we've had years of that. And so the new guard with under Ben Lee, I'm really excited for it. And yeah, I know it could sound like exaggerating, but I actually do believe it. And I think that it'd be really fun to still be doing shows with you guys in a decade, in 2030. I hope that's we'll be old men, possibly being overtaken by whoever's the young come-uppers. But yeah, I am really excited for the future of Hearthstone, at least this year, and hopefully for many. With that, all good things must come to an end. For people who are tuning in and said, like, oh, is Omnistone back? The answer is no. This was a one-time reunion special that we felt like we'd be fools to not at least gather together one last time. So with it, our final words for now. We're not going to shut the door forever, but for now we're going to put a pin on it. So Brian Kibler, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely been in talks of figuring out some way to continue some form of a show talking about Hearthstone and perhaps other games as well. So stay tuned for news on that. But yeah, I'm super excited for the future of Hearthstone, and probably just gonna turn this off and go play some battlegrounds right when I'm done because I've been playing a lot and can't get enough.
Firebat.
Yeah, really impressed with the Hearthstone announcements. Can't wait to continue playing and see what keeps happening. The only thing that I'm afraid of, and I said this earlier, kind of jokingly, is maybe they're doing too much. Hearthstone's been a very casual game for a very long time. If they do too much and scare away a lot of people by making the game too complicated, that could be bad. So that's a fear I've never had with Hearthstone before, and it's exciting fear, but it's also a fear and a little bit in the back of my mind where it's like maybe we try and do too much, we overextend, whatnot. But I love it, so it's a good fear to have.
I agree. I think that this is a unique position, and I think we'll just kind of tread the waters together and hold hands the entire time. Same for me. For my last words, I do want to say a couple.
You're holding my hand.
How do we do this?
Okay, there we go.
For my last few words, I want to say a couple things. First, I want to thank Kibler, Firebat, Greg, and Matt Com from Omnislash. We're not. This is just purely out of the passion of our own hearts. There's no money involved. We just really want to connect, and we really do miss you guys. And we're gonna try everything we can to try to get more content like that. This is not the end of us talking about Hearthstone indefinitely. We're gonna try to explore different opportunities. The second thing is that there is a very serious thing going on this planet right now with the COVID-19 health scares. And I want to encourage everybody to, first of all, do your research and read up. There's a lot of misinformation going out there, and there's a lot of people who are just spreading straight up lies. And I encourage you to take this matter seriously because it's a lot more than just about ourselves. It's about the people around us and even the people that are going to be coming after us. So please, please, please be safe. Please take care of yourself. Gaming's a great escape, but in the end, there's also reality that we have to face. So please take all the precautionary measures, be safe, because I want our community to be healthy and around for the decade so that I can take my freaking victory lap with a cigar and being retired at the young age of 39 and enjoying Hearthstone for decades to come even after. So I love you all. We all love you. So please, for the sake of the greater game community and Hearthstone and everybody elsewhere, take care. In the meantime, this has been real fun. We're just going to allow Kibler and Firebat to upload this to their YouTube channels. I might even put it on mine just for more discoverability. So if you missed any part of this, you can check out Kibler's VODs or those videos. Other than that, follow us on Twitter. And it's been real. It's been fun. So enjoy all your gaming and all your special quarantine time. From Frodan, Kibler, Firebat, this has been Omnistone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.